Yes, good morning to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening for the ones on the other side of the world. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today and taking your time to attend. We will have our webinar today. Next slide, please, Remco. We will have today the channels and segments in the home decoration, home textile sector. And today Remco Kemper and Kees Bronk will explain to you all about this, the available information, how to enter the European market. And they will discuss the different segments within this European market. And but before they will start and introduce themselves, I shortly would like to explain to you the CBI and myself. So my name is Jantien Rutte, and I work for the CBI Market Intelligence team. And I have sectors home decoration, home textiles, and also the sectors coffee and cocoa. And my previous work is that I've been active for over 25 years in the trade. Next page. So what is CBI? CBI is the Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries, and CBI supports the small to medium-sized exporters to strengthen their economic, social and environmental sustainability through exports to Europe and regional markets. And what we offer there is practical solutions in the bottlenecks that we experience in the export value chain, which are many bottlenecks, and we have many solutions for that. We offer them via projects in certain countries. And one of the main bottlenecks is the access to market information. And that's why we are here to help you to have access to this market information. And on top of that, CBI creates value through knowledge and developing networks in the European market and in the developing countries in many sectors that we are active. Next, please. So these are the target countries we are actively, which we are now active in, and we focus on. Next, please. And we have 14 focus sectors. Here you see all of them, and of course today we're here for the home decoration and home textile, but if you're interested, we also have the other sectors available on our website. Next, please. So what kind of information do we provide? We make studies based on the market analyze, and we make studies based on the market entry. And here you see that we have for the market analyze studies, we base ourselves on, so what is now the demand in Europe and what is the market potential? And what are the most promising countries in Europe, or for the home decoration, home textile, the most prominent channels and segments? And what trends offer opportunities for you? So we have the main trends and tips how you can take the best of the opportunities there. On the market entry part, we have different studies, buyer requirements, tips on finding buyers, or how to do business with Europe, or how to organize your export. And this year we have added a new study, is tips to go digital, which we have in the meantime placed on our website. Next, please. Besides that, we make special fact sheets, product fact sheets on the most promising products. And especially for home decoration, home textile, we made the study sustainability and market channels and segments. And all these studies you can find on our website. You see the address on the slide here. So you can have a look what is best for you and what is for your most of interest. And we have news items related to the home decoration, home textile market. And well, as today we are here, we organize free webinars. Next, please. Oh, now we can finally go to the interesting part. I give the floor to Kees and Remco. Thank you very much already for presenting us these studies. And well, yours.
Thanks a lot, Jantien.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to this webinar. Kees and I will present this workshop on market channels and segments. We're part of a team of 3 when it comes to the home decoration, home textiles, market intelligence. Karine does all the research. She's the lead researcher for our home decoration, home textiles, market intelligence, but she also works in other sectors. Now, Kees is a true veteran when it comes to his experience in the home decoration and home textile sector. He has his roots in the fair trade world, and today he works as an independent consultant. And he has a very strong focus on sustainability. Together with our other colleague, Irene, he has developed a whole sustainable design program, which is a big help in the current programs that CBI is running in home decoration and home textiles. And then last but not least, I would say about myself, my name is Remco. I'm an entrepreneur like Kees. I work together with SMEs in developing countries in home decoration and home textiles. I also work for private institutions, and I also have a small company of my own, quokabag.com. Well, that's the team, market intelligence team, home decoration, home textiles. Let's get to the actual topic of today. We're going to talk today about channels and segments. I will kick off with a short story about the distribution chain, and then Kees will take over and speak more about the segmentation in the market. Right, now let's start with the distribution chain. And distribution channels are actually the way that you get your product from your warehouse or factory to the end consumer in the European market. So if you look at your screen, on the left you have your small factory or your warehouse or whatever location you ship from, and on the right you have the happy European consumer. Now, how will your product reach that European consumer? Now, the most traditional model is that you, as an exporter, you sell to importers / wholesalers. In their turn, they will sell to retailers, and the retailer will sell to the end consumer. Now, this is the classic traditional model that's been around for a long, long time. You see a little asterisk after the word wholesaler. That means that this is the first area where things have started to change, is that you also have importers that are not wholesalers, but actually they are the larger retailers or retail chains. And this was one of the first aberrations in this traditional model. You can imagine that when you are a retail chain and you have, for instance, 400 or 500 shops, you have tremendous buying power. You have the same kind of buying power as a large importer or wholesaler, and you would prefer actually to buy your products directly with the manufacturer. Why? Well, for obvious reason, when you cut out the middleman, the importer wholesaler, you save money, but also you have more control over the kind of products that your supplier would like to produce for you. So this is like one of the first aberrations of the traditional model, but this has been around for a long, long time. This applies to volume production. This is an important point to make, because importers, wholesalers, and these larger retail chains, they will always buy in volume. I wouldn't say bulk per se, but you're talking larger volume, so usually container business. Now, as a producer, when you have a small workshop, a small factory, and your production capacity is limited, there is another trend going on for, let's say, the last 5 to 10 years, and that is the fact that you can supply directly to these smaller retailers. Now, smaller retailers, traditionally, they would always buy their products from these importers, wholesalers. But what has happened, as described, these larger retail chains, they have a big advantage when it comes to buying in volume, cutting out the middleman, and in that process, saving quite a lot of money. That means that they can offer products for a very low price in comparison to the smaller retailer. Now, what does a small retailer have to do to compete with these larger retail chains? they have to work on their product offer. They work on a certain type of buying experience. So it's not only the product, it's also the type of product, in what kind of environment you buy it. So these smaller retailers, they have to work hard. Now, one of the things that they can do to differentiate their offer from the offer of these larger retail chains is to search for specific unique products. And in that search, they could end up with smaller producers in developing countries buying products directly. And as a producer with limited capacity, this gives you the opportunity to sell smaller quantities, which is also a big advantage, because when an importer wholesaler is your buyer, you have only limited production capacity. You can imagine that the moment that a large importer places an order with you, assuming you can meet their price points, you can imagine that this puts a lot of strain on your production. In that sense, it's easier to sell smaller quantities to smaller retailers over the year, because that will put your production under less pressure. Now, so here you make the distinction between volume production and smaller capacity in production. This distinction also has consequences for the way that you actually agree with your buyer on how to send the goods. If you are selling to these importers, wholesalers, or retail chains, you have to deal with certain Incoterms. We'll get back a little bit later on the specific meaning of Incoterms, but it's actually the kind of agreement you reach with your buyer on how the goods will be shipped. Now, importers, wholesalers, and retail chains, they usually buy FOB, or CIF. I will get back to that a little bit later on. Now, in the example where you as a producer with limited production capacity would like to cater to smaller retailers, these Incoterms are different. You could think of DAP, delivery at place, or DDP, delivery duty paid. I will get back to this in more detail a little bit later on. Now, to understand for you what Incoterms are, we will focus on the most common Incoterms, both for the volume business and for the small quantity business. Now, Incoterms are actually meant to facilitate transactions between the seller and the buyer. And it refers to different types of goods, different volumes, and different types of buyers also. It's an abbreviation for international commercial terms. It's standardized, it's universal, just like HS codes, harmonized system codes. These things are like the English of the international shipping sector. These are internationally agreed terms. So it doesn't matter if you're in Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, or the Netherlands, we all agree on the same terms when we use these. These terms are part actually of the contract, which is important because every sale essentially is a contract between you and the company that buys from you. And when it comes to volume business, we're talking FOB. FOB is the kind of Incoterm which is used the most in volume business. It means free on board, here it is, and you have to insert the name of the port of loading. Now, this concerns container business, and this is especially suitable when you as a company are able to ship what we call FCL, full container loads. So you are able to fill a 20 feet, a 40 feet, or a 40 feet high cube container for one particular order for one buyer. In case that you work together with other producers to fill a container together, it's better to use Ex Works as Incoterms, top left, and that actually means that your prices include packaging, but the actual goods will be picked up at your factory or warehouse. Now, when it comes to selling to smaller retailers, DDP or DAP would apply. Small quantities to independent retailers, small shops, boutiques, etc. Now, DAP is delivered at place, but which you will usually use is DDP, because it also means that the duties have to be paid from your side. I will get back to that a little bit later on. Now, how to choose your Incoterms actually really depends, as described, on your distribution strategy and your buyer preference. We'll get back to that a little bit later now. FOB obviously deals with larger volumes and when your buyers are wholesalers, importers, or retail chains. So buyers who have a large buying capacity and can afford to buy volumes, meaning container loads. In case you're selling DAP or DDP, that applies to the small volumes to single retailers. Usually, you have one strategy targeting the buyers that are suitable for you. There are some companies who are able to target both, which you could say call a dual strategy, and you can cater to different players in the distribution chain. But that means you have to treat them as separate buyers, and they all have their own preferences. Now, I was already referring a little bit to trends in distribution. The first aberration I mentioned from the traditional model were the larger retail chains that started buying directly at the producers. And the trend after that was that those companies with limited capacity, limited production capacity, could start supplying to smaller retailers. Now, this is not an easy feat because these small retailers traditionally, they have been used to buying directly from these European wholesalers. Now, as you know, the European Union is one single market, so we're not talking about import duties. Logistics are very cheap, and it's very easy to order as a small retailer, to order any type of product from a wholesaler. It doesn't matter, from France, from Portugal, from the Netherlands, from Germany. The logistics system is very good, it's very easy, and the goods are actually delivered to your doorstep. Now, when a retailer would buy with you as a small producer in a developing country, they would expect the same kind of service. So that actually means that what they prefer is that whenever they buy with you, they would buy relatively small quantities. You're talking 300, 400, 500 euros, and they would like hassle-free delivery to their doorstep. That means that all the costs that are part of getting that order to their doorstep have to be prepaid. So that is also in the price that they pay for your products. That means the shipping, that means that the duties have to be paid, and that also means that all the paperwork has to be done in advance. So all they have to do is accept that box when it is delivered to their doorstep. Making it more complicated than that would be a deal breaker for them. Hassle-free is what they would like.
So Remco,
now, yes, please.
Why would that small retailer be interested anyway in buying directly from a manufacturer overseas?
Well, like I explained a little bit earlier, the idea is that it allows them to sell products that nobody else has. So it improves their competition, their position, especially in competition with these larger retailers who usually have a lower price level. So they have to compete on other points than price, which is always a good advice, because when you're competing on price alone, you are entering the race to the bottom. So this is one of the reasons that it allows them to have a unique portfolio of products. We have a study about this. It's an older study. As CBI as a policy, they don't show studies older than a couple of years. This one is already 5 years old, but we still embedded the link because even though the study is 5 years old, it is still spot on. So if you want to know more about this specific way of supplying to smaller retailers, you can read this study, read about the pros and cons, learn in more detail what it entails. Now, another trend in distribution is the fact that the importers, wholesalers we mentioned earlier, they also have started to target end consumers directly. And they can do so in the same way as small retailers do that, for instance, by opening a shop, but they can also do it online. And the idea for them is that they diversify their channels. Rather than selling to retailers alone, they now also open up the consumer market for them. Of course, the consumer prices are on average, you would say, twice as high as the prices that retailers pay to these wholesalers. So it allows them to realize more margin, and it also diversifies their market. So that's another trend you have been seeing. There's a lot of examples from wholesalers that open shops, or they have a web shop supplying to consumers. Now, smaller retailers, traditionally, they would sell from their brick and mortar shops. And as we all know, unfortunately, the world has been hit by a pandemic. So a lot of these shops have been closed. And this closed off the direct route to the consumer for the small retailers. And if they were not already active online, it was a big incentive for them to start online sales also. So you see that these smaller retailers, next to using their shops to sell directly to the consumer, they've also really started to sell online more and more and more.
Okay, and
now,
sorry, Remco.
Yes.
And the other part of this is also true, that the consumer, the new consumer, millennials and Gen Z, the younger consumers, they are 27 online anyway. So for them, like buying online is such a natural thing. So that also meant that the retailers needed to go online much more and be that convenient to that new consumer. So it also comes from consumer push.
Absolutely. So you could say it's push and pull in this story. So it comes from more than one direction. So that means that this trend it has actually accelerated due to the pandemic. And that is the case with a lot of developments. It's not that Corona causes certain development, it's more that it speeds them up, it accelerates them. Now, there is another trend, and this is where you as a producer think of targeting the end consumer in the EU market directly. Now, we've had a lot of questions about from SMEs in developing country about this type of sales. Especially because of the pandemic, like we said, this trend has accelerated. The fact that online business has grown tremendously, pushed by all these lockdowns. So as such, we would like to explain to you what are the pros and cons for you as a producer in selling and supplying directly to end consumers. Because there are some pros, I would say there's one pro, but there are a lot of cons. One of the things you have to understand is that even though you would not be selling online yourself, and online business has been on the increase, it could mean that a lot of your buyers, independent if they are importers, wholesalers who sell to retailers, or you cater directly to retailers, a lot of your buyers are already making that online effort. So you could say that you are still profiting from the fact that online business is booming, but that does not mean that you have to do it yourself. But to give a complete picture, we'll try to paint the pros and the cons. Obviously, like we just illustrated, the margins are high, the percentual margins, not the absolute margins. The margins are high because rather than selling to an importer, wholesaler, or retailer, you sell directly to the consumer, which means you can ask a retail price, which is usually, let's say, 4, 5, 6 times higher than your ex-works or FOB price. That means that percentually you are creating big margins for yourself. In the absolute sense, the margins are of course not so high because it concerns very, very small volumes. As a consumer, I'm not going to buy 500 throws. I will buy 1 throw and 2 cushions. So the volumes are very small. That means also in reaching this kind of consumers, you have to put a lot of effort into marketing and promotion, because online sales are of course about being found online. The moment that an end consumer is interested in buying this throw and these cushions, they will start looking online. And then you have to make sure that whenever they're looking online, your web shop is the one that has to come out on top. That is a job in itself. It's a very specialized job, and it's not easy. And you will be competing with local parties that are specialized in this type of sales. So the competition is also fierce, also from a technical point of view, because these companies are specialized in selling products online. Competing with them is not easy. Then there is the point of after sales and returns. The moment a consumer buys something online in Europe, they are protected in many ways by law. It also means that without having to give an explanation, they can return the product within 2 weeks after the moment they bought it. And how are you going to deal with these returns? If you are, for instance, a supplier in Asia, and you've sent and shipped a product to the Netherlands, how you're going to deal with the returns? That's a logistic and expensive puzzle in itself. Payment systems is something else. Not all countries outside Europe are able to deal with payment systems, for instance, such as PayPal. I work in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, there is no PayPal. And the fact that a consumer would have to pay his web shop via bank transfer doesn't inspire confidence. European consumers, they want to use payment systems that they are used to, and otherwise they may not make the purchase. So that's another complicating factor. And obviously it is also only suitable for more high value items, because you can imagine that if you're selling a 10 euro cushion cover to a consumer in Europe, all the effort involved in shipping, in making the invoice, in dealing with after sales, potential returns, etc., is so complicated and expensive that it is in no way in balance with the price of the item. So our advice, generally speaking, would be, when it comes to targeting end consumers directly, leave it to the specialists and try to supply to the specialists. Make these people your client. So stick to B2B, even though there's still the distinction between larger volumes for importers and smaller volumes for smaller retailers. Now, this is roughly the story about channels. As CBI has online a beautiful study called Market Channels and Segments in HDHT that further shows all the other refinements in this chain, because you see this image here, it's quite complicated. It's also part of the study, but there's also other buyers such as buying houses, buying agents, sales agents, there's the project market, etc., etc., etc. If you really want to get into detail understanding all the different channels, we would advise you to download the study from the CBI Market Intelligence platform. Now, this is in short the story about market channels. Now we're going to go to, oh, sorry, I have some final insights for you. Almost forgot those. So what is important is that your ability to produce larger or smaller volumes, that is actually what determines your most suitable distribution channel. And the type of distribution channel also has consequences for the way that you do your marketing and promotion. So each channel comes with its own set of rules. Now, even though the distribution chain has been evolving, it does not mean that all trends are applicable for your specific situation. When trends are there, always see if they are suitable for you or not. And if not, stick to the things that fit well with your type of business. Now we're going to go to the story on market segments. Kees, I give the floor to you.
Wonderful, cool, thank you. Any questions, of course, any remarks, just use the chat box. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll probably see chat. So chat with us if you want to. All right, so we're now going to the right far end side of Remco's chain. We're going to talk about the consumer, and consumers have different reasons for buying a product, even within one category. And we're going to talk about cushions in a minute and garden furniture. So even within one category, there are different reasons for buying a product, and different reasons mean it's a different segment. And how you deal with segments is that you have to build a specific strategy within the segment to be able to compete. And we're going to discuss the marketing mix you're going to use. So let's start with an example, which is cushions here. We see these lovely cushions, 8 of them. And yeah, my question to Remco is, why do we have so many different ones? Why don't we have one cushion that we're all going to use and be happy with? Why do we have so many?
Well, it's also the way how you use a certain cushion, for instance. You can use a cushion, for instance, a pillow sham. You can use it to sleep on, but you can also use it as a decorative item, for instance.
Okay, so different uses can determine a different type of product within cushions. We're going to show you an example in a minute. What other reasons, just off the top of your head, would you see for cushions? Why do we have so many?
So many consumers, so many different tastes, I would say. You also see it in the type of clothing that people wear. People look differently because they have different tastes.
Okay, so that determines colors, patterns, maybe even shapes. And they need to be different because you have different taste from me. You have bad taste, I have great taste. So that means also different cushions.
Case that is debatable. You cannot discuss about taste.
Cool. What other reasons can we come up with for cushions?
Well, I already referred to it a little bit, but it depends on the place in the house. If you have a decorative cushion on your couch, it's a different product than when you have a cushion in your bed. It's a totally different story.
Cool. Okay, we're going to show you that example in a minute, right? Anything else? I mean, we have 8 cushions here, so we might as well come up for 8 different reasons.
Well, change. You know what people are like. Sometimes they get fed up with looking at the same cushion for 5, 6, 7 consecutive years, and they decide, I'm going to revive my my living room. I'm going to change my cushions, for instance.
Cool. Yeah. One reason could be the season is changing, although home is not always that seasonal as fashion, but that could be one reason. I want to have a slightly different color set in my home. All right. Yeah, change. We want change. We don't want the same thing all the time. Anything else, Remco? I'm testing you today.
Yeah, really. But a big accelerator of change is also the developments in the market and trends. You see the same in fashion to a higher degree, I would say, than in the home. But when there's a new trend, people feel inspired by it, and they say, "Oh, this is cool. This could fit very well in my house. Let me switch off these old cushions for a set of new cushions that are fully in line with the new trend."
Cool. Are all consumers equally susceptible or influenced by trends? Or do you see a difference?
I see a big difference. There's a lot of people that also focus on, you could say, more timeless pieces, because it could be a matter of taste. It could also be a matter of conviction, in the sense that trend as an accelerator for change, you could say it's not very sustainable. If you use trend as a reason to buy a new cushion, while the old cushion is still functional, you could actually say, yeah, that's really not sustainable, because you're throwing away a good product to replace it with another product. Why would you do that? So that would be personal, I would say.
Okay, wonderful. So as a supplier, you don't always want to follow the trends, but maybe also you want to actually avoid trends a little bit and show a style which is more consistent and longer.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, almost there. 3 more reasons for buying.
Budget.
Okay, cool. That's how much money you have to spend.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the lower end of the market, people have less to spend, but also they are willing to spend less on home. It's also that. It's the willingness to spend and the ability to spend. And of course, that determines on what type of cushion you go for. Good. Just finished the 2.
Yeah, gifting. That's a classic. Give a nice gift and the gift sector, it has changed in the sense that people give all kinds of different things. So it could also be a very good reason to present a nice cushion for Christmas to somebody you really like.
No, it's always a nice positioning, because people will always celebrate. Public or private holidays or celebrations are always going to be there. So the gifting market will always be there, but it requires a specific type of product. I mean, but gifting certainly is another reason for buying for the consumer. I want to buy a gift for somebody.
Yeah, and then the last one, Kees, status. I would know not much about that. You answer that one.
Okay, well, you know, people buy products obviously for different reasons, and one of the reasons could be that you really want to show your wealth. For instance, you want to show off that you have like very expensive items in the home, like silk cushions or cushions with a specific fabric, or highly priced items. So status has to do with showing off to a certain extent, but maybe also showing off your taste. I have good taste. I have money. I know what's happening in the market. So a lot of what you buy for your home is because you like it yourself. It's your taste, but it's also really for showing your friends how well you're doing or how good your taste is. That's status. It's a very big underlying reason for buying in many product groups. Okay, so we just run through cushions. Yeah, let's find one of the reasons, which is place. Here we see a lovely bedroom and with lots of cushions. What can we say about the use here?
Yeah, I think we already addressed it a little bit. You see the cushion lying in front is more of a decorative piece, whereas the cushion in the back, the large one, is more your pillow, and that means that is a more functional cushion than the decorative one, which is lying on the bedspread.
Okay, so if we focus on that product side of the product, I mean, how would maybe the product side differ between the decorative cushion on the bed and actually the pillow you're sleeping on? I mean, in terms of the product's elements, how could it differ?
You could say that the pillow has a number of specifications which are really related to how you use it. Obviously, you cannot embroider a pillow with sequins or beads, because that would be extremely uncomfortable. Whereas the decorative cushion is just what it's called. It's decorative. So it has less of a practical function. It more has an aesthetic function. So that decorative cushion, you could, for instance, embroider with sequins and all kinds of other beadwork.
Right. So, and maybe also the material. I mean, you sleep on the pillow, so moist absorbent materials are important there. That's totally unimportant for the cushion that's on the bed. So the material side, the decoration side, even the style maybe would differ between those types of cushions, even though they could be in the same place here, but different uses. So that's an example that on the product side, the ingredients that are in it could differ vastly between a similar products. All right, let's take the next one. Okay, so we're making the case for furniture, for cushions. Furniture is also very much the same idea, that we, on the right hand side, you see my little sister who drew a chair, which is the classic iconic chair, straight back and 4 legs. This is how we know the chair, and it worked. It's worked through the ages, and still we have so many different chairs in the world. Again, for the same reasons: taste, whatever, all the reasons that we just mentioned. So for furniture, cushions, in fact, any product group in home has different reasons for buying, and therefore different segments. Okay. Full points for those who can mention at least 4 of those chairs here, because they're all famous designs, as some of you may know. Okay, let's move on. So for all the product groups, we have different reasons for buying and therefore different segments. Now, the easiest way to talk about segments based on value is that we have a high, middle, and low segment in the market. And that also goes for any product group that you can identify in home. Okay, so the lower end is typically very broad. It has product, price, distribution, and promotion elements that are different from the middle and the higher end of the market. Now, how do we distinguish between those different segments? That we do that with the help of the marketing mix. Marketing mix is another word for the 4 Ps: product, price, place, and promotion. And if you do your marketing mix well, then you are able to compete in a specific segment. So we're going to just show you examples, and then maybe we can talk about the marketing mix while looking at examples. Okay, yeah, let's show this movie. We have a pallet sofa by Action, which is a brand, and they are, can we do the movie first?
Yeah,
okay.
We're going to do the movie, Kees. I have to set it up. Give me a second.
Okay.
And there we go.
This is a juggling act.
It's
just watch the movie and then we talk about it. Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Well, that brings us to the end of the movie.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about it. So we're already giving it away by showing this full slide, but don't worry. Let's start with the product side. What did we actually see in terms of product, Remco?
Well, we saw something which I would say would be relatively simple. And what you also saw in the movie is that you have to put it together yourself.
Okay, so it's self-assembly, right? And
yeah.
It's a pallet sofa, so based on a pallet idea. Huh? You all know pallets. So they're making a sofa for outside. Huh? This is garden furniture based on a pallet idea. Huh? And the main thing is it's self-assembly. You have to put it together yourself. Where would you get it? Yeah, let's run this. Then we move to place. Okay, place is where the consumer buys it, where they can buy it. So this is a product that obviously is available from Action, and Action is a big player. They have lots of retail and also heavily online retail. But you can also buy this item in DIY stores, do-it-yourself stores, and you bump into it and maybe you take it home almost from an impulse. In terms of marketing, we call this intensive distribution. That means that you're almost finding it around the corner everywhere. And that's typical for this type of products because you need to find it and buy it and you don't have to make any effort. We're going to go into this. So the place.
Action.
Yeah.
Action is one of those examples of they're so big, they buy straight from the producer. They would never go through an importer wholesaler.
Exactly. Okay, let's look at the next P, promotion. This is how you communicate your products. Okay, and what they say, actually, I checked it out, and they're quoting. They say solid wood. So that doesn't mean a lot. It doesn't show you any type of wood or how precious it is or how interesting it is. It's just solid wood is what they are giving us. They do that on purpose because mostly for those consumers, for this type of consumer, also that it's not so relevant. So they're promoting it very minimal way. And the movie shows you how they do it. Just put it together yourself. It's an easy thing and you can take it along. Then the final P is price. I checked that out for you. How much is it, do you think, Remco?
Well, yeah, I know it, of course, but it's quite amazing when you come to think of it, because the whole pallet sofa, including those cushions, comes to €107.
Okay, that's almost
for a 3-seater. Yeah, you could say that's not expensive.
It's including the cushions. That's the full thing.
Yeah.
So you have something nice for outside in your garden for a little bit over 100 euros. So this is typically which end of the market, Remco? If we look at,
I would call this pretty low end.
Low end, yeah, it's a low end.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back a little bit on this word there, intensive distribution. Just run it by. There's types of items and types of distribution. Specialty goods. This is very special stuff, like a very limited edition vase by Jaime Hayon for Ladro. There's only a few. There's limited edition, very high end and costly, and they are distributed exclusively, so only found in brand shops and very limited shops, because you want to tell this consumer, this is just for you, not everybody can afford. So for specialty goods, exclusive distribution. Then there's something in between, shopping goods. This is goods that, you want to compare a little bit in price, and you walk around a little bit, or you go online and you compare a little bit. And so those are selectively distributed. And then the ones we're talking about here, Action, they are convenience goods, you know, nice everyday basics, in this case for outside, and you're not going to shop around for them, okay? You just want to find it around the corner to be very, to make it very convenient. So Action makes sure that they are in your face all the time, and therefore you take along this pallet sofa. So typically intensive distribution, you can go more selective, and finally very exclusive and high end, okay? A little bit of marketing background for you there. Okay, let's move on to our next example, which is another outside sofa.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the next movie, Kees. So give me a second here.
Yeah, let's show it.
Okay, there we go.
Yep, just cool. Okie dokie.
And
Just
there we
watch
go.
it.
KV
All right.
Home.
Okay, we're not going to stay too long here, but two highlights I want to emphasize here is that they're really focusing on mood or style. They themselves call it rustic and colonial, and that's typical for mid-market. In mid-market, consumers want to buy into a complete style or mood for their home, and that's just typically what they're emphasizing here. You even see indoor furniture, but it's all in the same style, and they're showing you complete concepts. So that's important to know for mid-market. And one other thing I want to mention here is that they are mentioning that the wood is sustainable wood, FSC certified wood. So they're highlighting that element to this consumer. And this is, I would say, mid-high market. And there the consumer is becoming a little bit more interested in sustainable aspects of your products. Let's move to the next slide. This is what I want to kind of focus on for now, also for time's sake, because it's already 1:45. Can we move to the next slide?
Absolutely.
Okay, so keep in mind that for mid-market style, coherent style is quite an important reason for buying. Mid-market consumers typically want to build a mood or a style in their home. Not always, but it's a big element and big reason for buying in home. Okay, FSC, I want to talk about that a little bit. If you could go to the next slide. Okay, how does this now sustainability and segmentation? Let me sum this up for you. Increasingly in home, in all the segments, we are finding examples of sustainability, social or environmental aspects or concepts. In the upper segments, sustainability is often combined with good design. So for instance, they call it timeless design. This is design that's not trendy, but will last for longer, and you love it for longer. And that's also an element of sustainability. Or they build good design, which means sustainable materials. So in the upper end, design, high design, good design, and sustainability is often combined. In the mid-market, we see lots of different examples, from recycling and alternative materials to also social concepts, such as fair trade concepts or other ones. So in mid-market, the whole sustainability discussion is very lively, and it's also meaningful in terms of what the consumer wants. More and more mid-market consumers want to see elements of people and planet in their offers. All right, so then the lower end, they are focusing more on risk. So you will see a lot of certifications to make sure that they stick to the law. It's a little bit more defensive, and not so much communication is made around the idea of sustainability, but it's certainly popping up. And when you ask, like people like us, when we talk to lower end buyers, and they often have sustainability elements in their offers, but they don't always want to communicate very openly about it. So it's more risk avoidance and more defensive, but it's certainly there, and it's popping up in all the segments today. Yeah, next one. Okay, we have, this is a movie, final movie.
Yeah, final movie. Give me a second.
Yeah. Okay, just watch it. This is the higher end of the markets for outdoor furniture. Let me run by the 4 Ps or the marketing mix for you. When we talk about the products, they really show the craftsmanship. They're kind of really zooming in on the joints, for instance, to show that this furniture has been well made and maybe even handmade. But they're really showing the craftsmanship. That's typically upper end. They also show it's a 3-seater. They call it slender lines. So they want to talk a little bit about design with you, which they wouldn't do in the other ends of the market. And they mention teak wood. Interesting here, teak wood is a sustainable, durable wood. Not sustainable necessarily, because that's actually the point here. I would have expected them to talk about sustainability. When you talk about teak, they don't. They are silent about it. They just emphasize the fact that teak is very good for outdoor and weather resistant if you treat it properly. So place, where can we buy it? Really in design stores. Okay, not everywhere. So it's like really quite selective or maybe special distribution, and of course often online. So it's much more limited distribution because this is for the happy few, right? This is for the consumers who can afford or want to afford. Promotion, they talk about the brand, Ethnic Craft Presents. So they want to put themselves forward very much. And they also, if you go online, and they also mention an actual designer. And for some consumers in this end, they would know this designer and really appreciate his work. And therefore, that would be another reason for buying. And they also give care tips. They say, look after our furniture well, because then it can be more timeless. So really a lot of care. The price is over 3,000. It's like close to 4,000 for the garden set that you saw. So you pay a lot, but you're also getting a lot of value, typically higher end of the market. All right, let's summarize. So we have a marketing mix. Whenever you want to move into particular segments, you always have to prove your point, and you do that by the 4 Ps. So this could be reasons for buying or design elements on the product side. In terms of place, what type of good is it? Is it specialty good or convenient good? And then where can I find it? That's important. Okay, and in terms of promotion, this is what story are you telling to your consumer? And what media are you using? And of course, increasingly, we are using the online media, but even then you can differentiate how and what you're using. Finally, price. Price will be lower or higher according to this whole mix. So to be high or low in the market is not just price, it's how the 4 Ps work together. It's a marketing mix. Price is one element of it. So price needs to be exactly in line with your product values and how you distribute and what you communicate. Price is one element. All right, for time's sake, we only have 5 minutes left, I think. Let's summarize with 2 final insights. Remco, we always talk about countries are not markets. Why are we saying that in our market intelligence?
Well, obviously, if you look at the European market, you could almost see it as a single market, and you see that, take the example of the importers, wholesalers, they're selling cross-border. They're selling cross-border, and what is determining in their proposition is their place in the market. This is what you've been talking about, is the segmentation. So rather than selling a certain product to Germany, you're actually selling a product to a buyer in a certain segment, which aligns with the segment that you are operating in. And so in that sense, countries are not markets.
So we always say your marketing is about the 4 Ps. It's based on segments and your knowledge of segments and how you create your 4 Ps. It's not to do with a country. A country is a destination. It's not a market. Okay, and the final insight, and why are we talking about the consumer anyway? We are exporters to the EU, hopefully, and we don't even sell to the consumer most of the time. Why am I still talking about consumers now, Remco?
Well, the story is that in the end, the products have to end up with the consumer. The consumer is the one who buys the product to actually use it. So their needs are actually a driver when it comes to what kind of products are popular and what kind of products are not popular. So in that sense, we're all catering in the end to the consumer.
Exactly, and all your distribution partners, the wholesaler and the retailer, they are very aware of consumer needs. So because they are aware of consumer needs, you also need to be aware in order to service your distribution partners. So the consumer very much matters, and you need to follow consumer needs. A lot of information that, especially on trend level, is always also available on the CBI website. We have a whole document on trends, and those are consumer trends. All right, that sums it up. I think for time's sake, let's go to the final slide, which is any question from your end on channels.
Yes.
Or
and
segment.
I think, Kees, Jantien and Karine and Margriet have been collecting questions from the question box.
Wonderful.
Now, so are there any questions for us at this moment, Jantien?
Yes, we do have questions for you.
Okay.
So we do have some remarks and we have some questions. So I will start with the first question that we have entered. But first of all, thank you very much for sharing the information with us.
Sure.
It's quite interesting. We have the first question. In a way, you have already also answered, but we have the question of Rayena. She's to ask, what is the best way for an exporter to promote and market products in the European market, in the European Union?
It's a single question, and there are multiple answers, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe you could point out the most important, or to give an idea.
Okay, well, let me
already said that most of the information you can also find, or more information you can find, of course, on our website, but just give a small help.
Yeah, well, the most important tips there are that do not go blind into the market. Be aware that there are segments. Study the segments in your product category, and then formulate the 4 Ps for your category, and then you've done the full job. When your 4 Ps are coherent and you have a price that is suitable for your segments, and you communicate in a proper way, also suitable for that segment, then you're on your way to really marketing into the EU. So in that sense, it's a strategic process. Study your segment, find your segments, and create your 4 Ps, your marketing mix accordingly.
Thank you, Kees, for the answer. The other question that is coming in is if they are supplying to a marketplace company, is it always on inventory mode, or can it be payment against consignment? And please explain the modes available. You have already explained, of course, the different delivery terms, but I think the most important part here, and the question is it always on inventory mode?
Well, when it comes to smaller retailers, retail chains, importer wholesalers, generally, yes. They buy the product off you and they store it in their own warehouse. So that would be definitely on inventory mode. That does not exclude business on consignment basis. However, it is much more rare, and it really depends on what your buyer is asking from you. And that is also something that you would have to give a lot of thought to, because consignment basis means that you do produce, but you do not get paid until the actual product is sold. So that means a larger pre-investment from your side. So our tip would be to be careful with this kind of business and carefully look at the pros and the cons.
Exactly, because people don't go bankrupt maybe because they're making losses, but mostly for having a lack of capital. And in this kind of situation, your capital is sitting somewhere and you cannot use that money until you've been paid. So be very careful with consignment modes, which again are quite rare in home. Although there are fulfillment services coming up more and more, and they actually allow you to place an amount of your stock in Europe, and they will do the fulfillment for you. But again, here the risk is with you. It's your capital and your stock, and we would kind of really tell you to be careful there.
Thank you for the good advice. The other question is, why should an exporter rather focus on a market niche than on a country market? Because if the exporter targets smaller retailers, shouldn't I do so in different country markets?
Yes, that's true. Our message wasn't don't sell to different countries. Our message was when you're making your marketing mix, make it for specific segments. And then you'll find that if you go for a middle market, the mix will be the same for Italy, Germany, or Holland. You can play with the same mix. So you don't have to make a different mix for different countries. That's what we're saying. But if you do your work properly and you really find your segments and you position yourself well in those segments will be found in all of those different countries. Sometimes they are bigger and smaller, but those very same segments will be found across Europe. So we're not saying stick to one country. We're saying create a mix which agrees with the terms that you need in your segment.
Yes. And then I think we should explain this a little bit. You used the example of the cushion pillows, and now we have the question if, because you're using that as an example, if this product is also the highest sale in Europe.
No, we
could explain a little bit that there of course are many products within the home decoration, home textile markets, and this was an example of.
Yes, we're just showing you an example. We also showed you some furniture, and in any product group in home, there are different reasons for buying. That's why we showed you two examples and one example of the cushions. That doesn't mean cushions is the most important product in home. Many products are different. If you want to find out import and sales figures for the different product groups in home, we also have information there on the CBI website. So we're just showing you cushions just for the example of different reasons for buying and not because it was the most important products.
Yes, and maybe that's also, you can see that in our studies, but you can also check on the ITC website, the export potential figures, if you're looking for a specific product or segment.
Yeah, and as an addition to that, Jantien, you can always say, when you're looking at the statistics, these figures are huge. And when you are a relatively small producer, you can also, if you do your marketing mix well, you can create your own little niche. So independent of the figures, even if you could say that the sales of baskets is going down, which is not, but as an example, you could say, despite the fact that the sales is going down, I'm a basket producer. Creating my own niche will satisfy my production capacity. So in that sense, it is always good to stick to products that you are very good at.
Yes. And it's not really a question, but I think more like a statement, but maybe it's good to repeat it. It's on the competition, basically, for example, between Asia and Africa. If you look into the different segments, so the low, mid, high, is that they emphasize that if you would like to enter the mid to high segments, they have to be sure that the quality should also be high quality products.
Quality is not a differentiator, I always say. It doesn't differentiate you. Everybody who needs to export to the European market in any segment, the consumer doesn't even think about quality. They assume the quality will be right for them. So you're not competing on quality because everybody has good quality, basically in any segment. A competition between Asia and Africa, it only happens when the storytelling is very important. Then maybe you can tell an African story or maybe a Vietnamese story, but generally you're just competing in the same segment. So if your supplier from Africa or Asia doing garden furniture, you have to pick your segment and you're competing in that same segment if that's where you want to be. So it's again about segments, not about origin so much.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question is entering the channels using, like, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, whose or Archie products and such. How could you enter into a fulfillment service, and how can you help then entering the European market? Where can I find that information?
I didn't properly hear the product type, Jantien. I'm sorry. What kind of products was this?
So, using the channels like whose or Archie products.
Like architectural products, or I'm a little bit confused.
Me too.
Yeah, I will ask you to clarify the question.
Yeah.
And we shall continue with the next one.
Yeah.
This is a question for CBI, but I might make it clear is if we will arrange selling websites, but we do not provide that kind of information. The information that we post on our website is based on where and how you can find the information which is relevant for you as an SME. So we are not really arranging the selling websites. But we do provide information, for example, on fairs, how you could maybe introduce your product. So please check the website for how to enter and to find the tips. So I think this question is also on our website but how and where can I find the market consultants to develop and launch the product lines in Europe? And that is again on the channels and segments which you have to understand. But I think also this kind of information is on our studies on tips how to find buyers.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, you could say there's a wealth of information on the CBI Market Intelligence platform. And like Jantien is saying, there's 10 tips to find buyers. There's specific product fact sheet studies on products. There's a lot to find. Channel segments, it's all there. Yeah.
And another question is, if you look into the home decoration, home textile market divided into customers, can you say that there will be a different market segment for the artisanal and the handcraft products against the industrial production?
Yeah, you could say so, in the sense that I'm generalizing now, so there's always exceptions, but you could say that industrially produced items are usually in the lower end of the market, usually. Whereas artisanal products, they have added value through the fact that they are made by hand. And added value means that you rise in segment. This is a very generic comparison. Because yeah. If you have for instance, a very fancy mobile phone, that is also an industrially produced item, but it can be very high end. But in home, if you make the distinction between industrially produced and artisanally produced, you could say there could be a difference in segments, but it's not a given.
No, you could say that from mid-high onwards, handmade becomes a more important cue for consumers because it gets more personal, it gets more artisanal and craftsman, and those tick boxes for consumers from mid-high onwards. But it's a really general statement, and you really have to study each product category in order to know what is the value of the handmade in this. So really making a general statement here, right? But again, it depends on how do you study and what do you know about your segment. And then one of those elements could be handmade to be more or less relevant.
Yeah, and handmade only has added value in comparison to industrially produced, because some industrially produced items are very sophisticated and high-end, whereas some is really crappy. And this is the distinction then you would have to make. So it's not a given. It's not an easy distinction you can make in the.
Very good question.
Okay, and then we have the question: is there any significant differences in targeting wholesalers or retailers?
Absolutely. Yes, the big advantage of targeting wholesalers is that wholesalers have a tendency to aim for long-term relationships. If you are an importer wholesaler and you succeed in building up a successful relationship with your supplier, It helps you in the continuity of the products coming in, but it also helps you in establishing relationships in which you can work together with your producer in realizing new products. And the longer you know each other, the better you understand each other, the easier it is to work together on new products. So that is a long-term relationship. You can imagine that as a single small retailer, you are having less control over the product because you buy off the shelf. Because the quantities are so low, you cannot ask the producer, yeah, but could you change the size? Could you change the color? Could you adjust the product? So these people buy off the shelf, which makes them actually less loyal. These buyers are more fickle in their loyalties in comparison to importers, wholesalers. So there's a large difference. So that means that when it comes to targeting importers, wholesalers, the moment you have a couple of these as your client, you have a relatively steady base. Yeah. When it comes to targeting retailers, you will have to keep up your marketing efforts continuously because some will come and some will go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have the question, that is more a little bit on the how you see the development at the moment in the European market, which obviously was affected by COVID. And the question is, do you still see that it has been affected very much, or yeah, how do you see the future or the nearby future development at the moment?
Oh, that's a whole webinar in itself. But maybe a few cues. One is, of course, that the consumer has gone more online towards the retailer because obviously the shops weren't always open or accessible. So online buying, even for groups like older consumer groups that used not to go online so much, they are now going online, and that will be a thing that will stay. And consumers will also consider buying online. We think it's going to be more a hybrid model where brick and mortar and also online buying will go hand in hand. We also see this in, for instance, in trade fairs. If you're going to trade fairs, then there's also now digital platforms coming up more and more. And we will also see that because of COVID, but also because of general developments anyway, hybrid forms of trade fairs will also pop up more. So physical trade fair and a digital platform going together, and that will be the norm for the future. We also think in terms of how we do our marketing.
Yeah, and an interesting point also as a consequence of the pandemic and the lockdowns, there's been a reappreciation of the home. So in that sense, people were forced to stay home. So what they did, they critically reviewed their home because they had to spend so much time there. So there's a whole kind of developments have started. For instance, people cleaning out their houses, getting away with clutter, and this has had good consequences for the storage products like baskets and small furniture. You can also say the fact that people have been forced to work from home. They have re-evaluated their working place in the home. So everything which has to do with that. So you could also say that as a consequence of the pandemic, there have also been some positive consequences. If you compare the home decoration, home textile sector with, for instance, garments, you could say that garments has really suffered because people were going out less, and home decoration, home textiles has benefited in some areas. So it's not all bad. But some of these changes, it is hard to predict if they are permanent or not. But there are predictions, for instance, that fueled by the pandemic, more people, even after the pandemic, will work more from the home, for instance. And more people spend money on their gardens. These are all things that also influence our sector.
Yeah, and maybe as a final addition there, COVID related and also part of a longer term trend that was going on anyway, is that wellness driven products and mental and physical wellness, that area is going to stay. It's going to be very important in home. If you want to know more about this, there's also been a wellness webinar on this. So check it out. And also sustainability. We also hear the sector talking about this much more. Whether it's COVID related or not, it's certainly influenced it. I think sustainability will be more central in the future as well. So if you're looking for a competitive advantage as an exporter to Europe, you really have to look at sustainability as a core part of your DNA, I would say.
Yeah, I agree in that. I think also because as from the EU, in the future the Green Deal will be implemented, which has also focused on the sustainability. So that will become also, because of by law of the EU, will become extremely important.
Yeah, and the Green Deal means that there's going to be much more law in the EU developed for importers and consumers to make sure that legal and non-legal requirements, and that includes social and planet side, will be much more legal in the future, and you have to stick to the norms. And that will be definitely popping up, and the EU is working on that, so you can expect more legal requirements related to sustainability.
Yes, and we do also have some questions now coming in on tariffs or non-tariff measurements or legal or non-legal requirements. I'm leaving these questions to refer to our website that we have a very good study on exactly the requirements, non-legal, legal, on the home decoration, home textile market, which gives you a very good insight what are the requirements once you decide to start exporting to Europe. So please have a look there and check them. And you will find good links to the correct websites, which will keep you updated also on these measures and requirements and laws.
Yeah, and also if you're struggling with this element, which we can imagine because it's often very technical, make sure you find maybe ministries in your country or trade promotion organizations that can help you explain this further, or maybe testing institutes. Find help to actually understand those norms, because they can be quite technical, and it's not easy just from reading up on it to understand it. So we're giving you information on CBI websites, but also find local experts in your own country in order to know what's happening.
Yes. And in the previous question, a little bit on the outlook of the market due to the COVID pandemic, we also have the question on, you already mentioned it very shortly, the trade fair. The question is that they experience Ambiente to be the best fair to be attended. Is it still worth it to be attended? I think we can explain a little bit the online possibilities for if you're not able to travel yet to Ambiente.
Yeah, the issue with Ambiente is that there is no online equivalent to Ambiente if you are producing larger volumes. For instance, if you're producing smaller volumes and you would like to cater to small retailers, then Maison et Objet is a fantastic trade fair, and that also has a fantastic online component, which is called MOM, Maison et Objet and more. That is an online platform where you can really look as a smaller retailer for a lot of different products and categories from different countries. However, when it comes to Ambiente and you are in the more volume business, the volume halls, there is hardly any online alternative, and that makes it very difficult. At the moment, the expectation is that Ambiente 2022 will take place, but of course, as we all have experienced in these times, there are no guarantees. But I would say, yeah, sorry, Kees, go ahead.
As a general point, though, even though digital platforms are coming up, they are quite new in most cases. So they're also developing themselves. That's one thing. And the second thing, really, there's no replacement for actual physical fairs when it comes to really meeting buyers, getting traffic, presenting yourself, and doing your marketing properly and researching the market. It's also, trade fairs are a great way of researching the market because the whole industry is there for 5 days together. So you can also look around and learn. So we still also recommend physical trade fairs when COVID allows us. At the same time, we're also saying hybrid forms are coming up, also digital platforms, so also use those, and increasingly they will be used by the trade as well. But they are much younger and newer. So don't forget about the physical trade fairs. It's a great investment for you to be there. Or if it's very costly for you, maybe do it as a team, as a group of companies. But it's invaluable way of doing your marketing.
Yeah, and I think Kees is 100% right, but if you're still insecure about it, you can always consider to first go as a visitor and check it out. And then you don't have to invest in stand rental and stand building. And after your visit, you can always decide, is this something for my company or not?
Okay, thank you. We do also have some questions which I will answer shortly on companies that are looking to how they are able to enter projects that are being run by CBI. Is we post all, if we start a project in a certain country, in a certain sector, we place all these announcements on our website, and we use our social channels to announce the opening of registering into a project. So please keep these in mind, like Twitter. We post them on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and of course on the CBI website. And I think the last question that we have for you is a little bit asking your experience, but I know you both have a lot of experience in that, but I think it's a nice question. But if you could maybe, first of all, greetings from them from Bali, if you could share some success stories.
Hello, Bali.
You might have with companies that you have been training or working with to overcome logistics crisis. So of course, we all know that we have high container costs. It's a big concern for many people. And also, how does this impact the buyer sourcing behavior on these extraordinary costs?
Yeah, that's a bit of an issue, to put it mildly. The price of logistics has skyrocketed, and you see that it's especially companies are affected who produce volume items with a relatively low value. You can imagine if you have to put baskets into a 20-feet container, and the value of the shipment is $5,000, and the cost of transportation is $10,000, which used to be $2,000, for instance. You are having an issue. So one of the things we have been doing with companies who ship voluminous items with a relatively low value is to see if they could club shipments with more high value items to decrease the cost of transportation as a part of the total cost. And that is one example how you can do that. Otherwise, it remains a difficult situation. I don't know, Kees, if you have any examples from the companies you work with, but this is what we have been doing in Bangladesh.
Yeah, no, of course, this is a real direct result from COVID. We're hoping that it will turn around when economies are back on their feet again. So it's really like also even beyond us to know what will happen, because this is macroeconomic, global economic effects. We all have to follow the news. But yes, that's certainly a fact. A few other things that now matter more than ever before is to really pack well, to don't ship air. I always say ship products, do nesting, make collapsible products, flat pack, all of that. So look at your design side to make sure that your transport costs are also relatively low, and that your transport cost is divided over more units. That's one thing. So design, this also pushes your design in terms of transport. And also now we are seeing, because of this, that we're maybe looking at other ways, maybe going directly to retailers through couriers and smaller parcels. But that's not a solution for everybody. If you're a volume player, you're still dependent on your containers, and that's just how it is. For right now, cost of containers can be huge. There's nothing we can even tip you on that. It's just how it is.
And do you believe that the buyer's behavior is heavily influenced by that, or they just observe?
Short term, they are second sourcing and trying to get products from other areas, even from Europe. There's a lot of talk about what they call reshoring, so producing in Europe. But you know, there's not always direct alternatives for that type of product, maybe in Europe. But it's definitely what we have seen going on anyway. Like especially Eastern Europe is becoming a competitor to all of you out there from outside of the EU. And so yes, buyers will look at maybe more suppliers also closer by from the EU. And that is definitely a trend that's been going on anyway. But it is maybe accelerated by the COVID pandemic and the logistical crisis. But it's not always an immediate solution for all the buyers. But it's definitely, you hear a lot of talk about this.
Okay, we are almost at the end of our time also for this webinar. So any questions that are still pending, we shall answer later and send them out. We will also share this recorded webinar and the presentation for all the attendees. So for me, I would like to thank you very much, Kees and Remco and Karin, for having this webinar for us to explain the channels and the segments. And besides that, also to answer the questions which are a little bit beyond the subject also. But very happy with all your experience that you're also able to help the people to also answer these questions. I think it was a very interesting webinar on the subject. And again, thanks again for having this. And for all the attendees, thank you very much for taking your time to listen to the useful information for you. And for this segment, for this sector, for the home decoration, home textile, it's the last webinar of this year. So we will continue in the next year, in 2022, with new webinars. So please keep an eye on them. And for today, have a nice day, and thank you very much, and enjoy the upcoming holidays.
Thanks a lot, Jantien.
Thank you.